Murphy earlier today mentioning which of the top 10 teams in the AP poll, which of the top 10 teams in the AP poll will not be ranked at the end of the year. Not in the top 10, will not be ranked. Here's a stat from him. Every year for the past 20 years, except 2019, there has been at least one preseason top 10 team that finished unranked. And last year, North Carolina, A&M, and Iowa State were the three that finished unranked after being in the top 10. Which of the top 10 this year, the AP poll, you can mention 1, 2, or 5, but which of them is most likely not that they won't be ranked 17th or 12th or whatever, but unranked at the end of the year? Interesting question. Last year, North Carolina had the momentum. They had Howell.
We playing a game here? Or?
Yeah. I mean,
okay. Well, let's go Alabama. Well, that's not happening. They're not going to be outside the top 25, right?
Yeah. Nope.
Can you pull that list back up?
Oh, okay. I just lost you.
There you go, Craig.
There you go.
Okay. Ohio State. Well, that's not happening. Georgia. That's not happening. Clemson, not likely. Notre Dame, not likely. Now I think is where we get to where, and I'm not picking on A&M here either, but they were in this list last year as a team. So are they going to make it another year in a row? I don't know. That's going to be borderline to me. But yeah, I mean that's the first one where I go, I could see them not being in the top 25 at the end of the year.
Now I do think like A&M probably played in one of their bowl game last year. They probably wind up in the top 25. But again, that's all part of it. Yeah, I think Utah again should be rated above both A&M and Notre Dame. So I don't see them outside this. Michigan, I know they're really good up front, which leads me to believe on both sides of the ball, which leads me to believe that they won't be outside the preseason top 25. But they have not done it year after year yet under Harbaugh, which is why, it's been so stressful up there.
All right.
I don't see Oklahoma out of the top 25.
Why not?
But just because it's hard. But again, lots of turnover there.
Listen, and Oklahoma fans lose their mind when people say that, and there's been things written, including Kendall Cowell, who did this, but there's just enough where you could see if they slip a couple of different times. And then again, they could be right where they've always been, right there at the very top.
Going back to Michigan, because I thought about them too, but their schedule, man. I mean, Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn, Maryland, and then finally at Iowa. So there's, an interesting game. Then at Indiana, whatever, they should win that one. Penn State, Michigan State, at Rutgers, Nebraska, Illinois, at Ohio State. So I don't know. I think that they'll probably –
There's no Wisconsin on there. The non-conference schedule seems to be –
yeah, I mean, they should be 4-0 going into the Iowa game. If they're not, then something went drastically wrong. But they should absolutely be 4-0 heading into October 1st and going into Iowa City. Now, that's where you could get a kind of a fork in the road. Because then if they win that game, then they're going to beat Indiana. So they would be 6-0
yep.
going into Penn State on October the 15th with Penn State and Michigan State back-to-back in Ann Arbor. So I'm going to say that they stay in the top 25 for those reasons.
So number 9, Oklahoma. We mentioned because of the unknown, but let's say it's hard to think of them outside the top 25.
I was going to say, I think my two likely ones were A&M and Baylor. Honestly, I mean, they're the ones that I think. I mean, Baylor's schedule again. People talk about what all's coming back, and I get it, and I don't blame anybody for feeling the way that they do about how great this team can be. But I mean, look at their road schedule. That's not easy. That's not something that they've just done before. They've just gone and ripped off wins against West Virginia and Texas and Oklahoma and, Iowa State. I mean, they've done part of that, but they've never ran that whole gamut ever.
At Provo, at Ames, at Morgantown.
Yeah.
At Lubbock, too. I mean, that's something they've had to do.
Well, Morgantown's on a Thursday night. Texas is in Austin on a Friday night. Yeah. I mean, so they're on the road probably against all the best teams. They're in Lubbock.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't mean like the Tech's going to be one of the best teams. I don't expect that. But
hard places to play.
The hardest places to play in the Big 12, they're going to be on the road.
Mm-hmm. Ames,
Morgantown,
Lubbock, yeah.
Every single one of them. They can't beat TCU to save their life. I mean, they can. They've beaten them recently, but I mean, last year is just such a bad taste in my mouth still, and I'm sure in theirs. But you just my point being, you just never know with that rivalry because they should have beaten TCU probably about 6 straight times at this stage, and I'm being a little bit over there.
Remember
but
the year Rule? They finally they got to 7-6, and they lost that game at home. They blew a tire in that game when they scored 10, 12 points.
When Jalen Reagor outscored them?
Yeah.
Bill, I think it's
2 plays.
Bill Kennelly or Bill Connolly. We've had him on. He's from ESPN. Here's some of the things, Connolly. When this was brought up, and he was trying to look at the same question that McMurphy put up, one of the top 6 will win the national title. 2 of the top 10 will end up unranked. He said, sorry, Baylor. Then, of course, there were questions from those who wanted to know about this. And again, you may not want to hear this, but I love to listen to what could be true. Because teams that lose the vast majority of their skill core and secondary tend to regress, and as do teams that were 4-1 in one-score games. And that's an important note. Teams that made huge leaps the year before, Aranda, absolutely rules, but they do check many of the regression boxes. And that's one of the things about, do they sustain it? I feel like because of what they do have coming back, both lines, offense, defense, your quarterback, and much more, then perhaps you should be able to sustain it. But there are some of those trends, those analytics that people do look at as well.
Yeah, they lost the most draft picks they've ever had. Many of them leaders. The games that we just mentioned. Blake Shapen seems to be a good quarterback, but let's repeat, he's played all of 2.5 games basically. And I guess if you throw in garbage time, he's played in close to 3 games now. But mostly 2.5 is what, go to the Kansas State game, then the Tech game, then the Big 12 title game, and that's all he played in basically last year. So, yeah, I mean, this is what I've been saying is, I get all the reasons why everybody's gung-ho, Big 12 champs again and top 10 and this and that. But, I mean, it doesn't take much time to see how they could go, completely the other direction. And especially if there's just God forbid, an injury to Shapen or something like that. I mean, just my gosh, that's because they don't have the veteran defense in the back 7 that they've had. So, I mean, that's going to take some time, I would think, to adjust to no matter what good players they've had. I mean, just on and on and on. So, yeah, I mean, if you're playing a guessing game, I'd say Baylor's definitely, probably along with A&M is one of those that I would, if you have to pick, I'd pick those 2 as the most likely.
It's hard to get there. It's hard to sustain it. Sometimes when you really look at what Alabama has done, and Ohio State and a lot of others, it is truly what Nebraska did for many, many years, Florida State, Miami, and they're trying to get to that point where they can sustain it. If you're good, you do. And maybe there's going to be some young, skilled people that do rise to the occasion. I think there's some really good talent. We just haven't seen them do it yet.
And I want to say, too, I mean, Bill Connolly, and all due respect to him and everybody else that does these formulas and these, I mean, I'm dumb at math. I just can't do it, never have been able to do it, never interested me to do it. So I leave the FPI and all this other stuff to the S&P Plus and everything, all that stuff. But those things aren't always completely accurate.
No.
I mean, they're not nearly
Otherwise,
always
those guys
accurate.
Would be billionaires because they could bet on the trends.
Exactly. And I don't know how many people go back, kind of like your thing at the end of the year. Oh, I was wrong about that. Sorry to tell you. I don't know how often that really happens. And I do think he does come out and say, hey, we were way off on this. And it's admitting, this is not perfect. There are outliers and there are, things that come into play, like human being emotions and things like that, that you can't account for. So, yeah, I see where he's coming from, and I see that point of view, but, it's not perfect, like you said.
Quick text from Caleb in Michigan.